Hi, I'm Sandra Lilley from NBC Latino, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Dr. Matt Barreto, who is an associate professor of political science at the University of Washington and a principal at Latino Decisions, which does extensive polling on the Latino vote, and also Dr. Stephen Nuno, an assistant professor at Northern Arizona University and teaches political science, and he's also a contributor for NBC Latino. And Matt, I want to start with you. We always talk about the Latino vote, and we know it's not monolithic, but without really getting in the trenches for too long, just give an overview, brief overview of the sort of the diversity within the Latino electorate and how it's changed, especially since the last census, and how it's grown in different states, and more importantly, how in some states it could tip the balance in this election.
Well, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Sandra, for having us here to chat with you on this program. The Latino vote is quite diverse, and it has been growing. And that's something that is very important to underscore, that it's not just concentrated in California or Texas as it used to be, but Latinos have been spreading out across the country. And there are a number of states this year where the Latino vote will be quite influential because of that population growth. Nevada, Colorado, Arizona. Florida, of course, has been a long-standing state of Latino population and influence, but we're also looking at some additional states that are new states to the Latino map, and that are places like Virginia, North Carolina, and even for the first time, a state like Iowa, which is a very, very competitive state. They've had a very rapid growth of the Latino population, and so it's not just the case that Latinos are concentrated only in California and Texas. There are a number of places where Latinos could be influential this year, and that's something that we'll all be looking in and trying to chart during this election.
And I want you later also to speak. You just released a poll today on Latino voters. But Stephen, I want to ask you a little bit about that. The poll that Latino Decisions released today is very similar to the NBC, Wall Street Journal, Telemundo poll and other polls, which basically show that the needle hasn't shifted much in terms of Obama having the support of Latinos almost 2-1 against Romney. And Stephen, why do you think that is? We keep on saying that Latinos are not a monolith, but why do you think that this year it seems that the needle is not moving too much in the Republicans' direction, as here we are in Tampa looking at what the convention will bring in the next few days?
Right. Well, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Latinos they're a very diverse group, but they're also very united by a common experience. And part of that experience is the discussion going around in the country with regards to immigration. And so that's an issue that will pique the identity of Latinos to have some sort of commonality, and right, even though they are diverse, the way that the country discusses issues like immigration kind of unites many Latinos. And so while they are diverse, it doesn't look like the Republicans are going to make an appeal that's going to be effective going into the future. One of the things that I wanted to add was even in places like Indiana, where Latinos make up a small percentage, 4 to 6% of the voting population in Indiana, President Obama won the election in Indiana by about 1%, less than 1% of the vote. So even in places where you don't see a large population of Hispanics, they can have an impact on the national election.
So here's what's interesting. When it comes to immigration, Matt, your poll shows that it was the second topic, if I'm not mistaken, right? Over 51% of Latinos thought immigration was important. And I think it's worth stressing that Latinos don't all think the same way. There are Latinos that think it should be only folks who are here legally. There's some Latinos that think that no, we should have a path to citizenship for everyone here and documented. Most Latinos are in favor of the DREAM Act, most are not. Tell us a little bit about those numbers before I tell you what happened today in the press conference that the RNC had, where immigration just went off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Stephen raised a very important point, and that's one that immigration can be a mobilizing issue and a unifying issue. That's something that we really didn't see before the immigration rallies in 2006 and all of the anti-immigrant legislation. We had done some polling in a state like Arizona before SB 1070. And we found that there were big differences into the third and fourth generation of those U.S.-born Latinos. They were not as united on the immigration issue after the Sensenbrenner bill in 2005. the immigration rallies in 2006, and then SB 1070, we saw mass unifying around this immigration issue, even while the Latino community remained diverse and had different viewpoints, conservative, liberal, etc. On the immigration issue, we started to see a rallying effect, that it was bringing people together. And it's no wonder you saw in Arizona, among Latinos in Arizona, over 80% opposition to SB 1070, over 80% support, close to 90% support for the DREAM Act. And so I think Stephen made an important point there, that it's how we discuss immigration, how immigration has become such a wedge issue that it has gone from talking about illegal immigrants to actually becoming almost an anti-Hispanic wedge issue. And that's why, even though the economy is such an important issue this year, that's why immigration lurks, and it remains something that we are paying attention to, and we want to hear what the candidates say about this issue.
And in fact, absolutely, we have Google data that just shows that when it comes to immigration, for example, when President Obama, there was a lot of talk about, and today a Republican spokesperson said, when President Obama had the chance to do something during his first few years of his presidency, he did not achieve immigration reform. Yet we have Google data which shows that when President Obama announced the deferred action for Dreamers, the searches among Latinos in major metro areas were through the roof. I mean, basically, it is an issue which matters to a lot of Latino families in this country. And today, the Republican National Committee had a press conference, and it was interesting because the leaders there were very, very inclusive, and in their language, they were saying that it's a big tent, and that Governor Romney, if elected, will do everything in his power to achieve immigration reform. Yet what was said to them is that the same platform, which is being discussed and voted on this week, has language sort of encouraging self-deportation. So there were sort of mixed messages. Ted Cruz told Angie Sandoval from Telemundo yesterday that he thinks that if Romney becomes president, he probably should rescind the deferred action. So is one of the problems the mixed messages that we're seeing on immigration, Matt?
Yeah, I'll take that first, and then I'd love to hear what Stephen has to say about that in terms of the Republican outreach. But there's been a lot of mixed messages on this. Yesterday on El Punto, you had Carlos Gutierrez going on and talking to Jorge Ramos, and he said literally, there's the platform and there's the campaign. And he told Latino audiences on Univision, you can ignore the platform. What the platform says is one thing. What we're looking to is what the campaign will say. And that's a big inconsistency there, because the platform is symbolic of the entire party. And I think this is one of the challenges Republicans have had, is that there are plenty of good Republican candidates out there that want to court the Latino vote. But there seem to be today more who want to stake an anti-immigrant position. And that inconsistency has made it very hard for any particular candidate to overcome and to say to Latinos, hey, I'm on your side. And we say to them, well, then why does your platform call for more authority for Arizona, e-verify, and self-deportation? It's a complete inconsistency.
And Stephen, you've written extensively about this.
Right, and one of the things that many people don't realize is, there are people within the Republican Party who have historically been able to garner a high percentage of the Latino vote. John McCain, when he was running for senator, in his past, has gone about over 70% of the Latino voters in Arizona. And so the tone and the message and the policy really does have an effect on how Latino voters, how they act and their voting behavior. And so one of the things that we are constantly looking at, one of the fallacies of the Republican Party when they look at these issues, is we tend to look at these issues as exclusive issues. And so we tend to look at immigration as it is exclusive of the economy, or right. Abortion as it is exclusive of even immigration. When the reality is that the Latino population operates in the world in a very inclusive way with all of these issues. And so when Republicans say that immigration ranks 2, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th down the ladder from the economy or jobs, what many people don't realize is that the way that the Latino population operates, their integration with the American population makes immigration a very economic issue. And so many families in the country are existing dependent on an uncle or a father or a cousin who lives in the family in different statuses, and so that person may be working on some different status that he
Right.
can work. But
So-
that person is the one that is providing money for the family to send the kid to school.
So what you're saying is
or-
that immigration and the economy are not separate issues for many Latinos in
No,
the U.S.
for Latinos, I mean, they depend heavily on some sort of status for members of within the family to be able to come into work and to provide money for the family. So immigration is an economic issue for Latinos, and many times we like to discuss those issues as if they were exclusive, and they're most definitely not.
And let's shift a little bit to the economy now, and this is fascinating because we all know that Latinos were the group which was most buffeted after the Great Recession. 66% of Latino household wealth was lost after 2008. The rate of foreclosures is highest among Latinos. And yet again, why do you think it is? And by the way, that is the core message. Every Republican delegate, leader I spoke to, every legislator who will be speaking during the next few days always says that for them, the natural fit for Latinos is the Republican Party, the party of opportunity. Again, why are these messages not transcending, or will they, or can they, as we head into this convention for the next few days?
Well, I mean, Latinos are very receptive to the message of the Republican Party. I mean, that Latinos want to, they want to own homes, they want to start small businesses, and this is a very natural thing, a natural message for the Republican Party to reach out to. But you can't, on the one hand, talk about we want to increase business owners and small businesses, and then on the next hand say we want to institute a national E-Verify program so that everyone you hire is going to need to go through this system. It's not very consistent with Latinos, because while the message is pro business, pro small business, there's an alternative message going on underlying that, which is undercutting what Latinos may be receptive to. The mortgage issue as well. I mean, there are bailouts for banks. Yet, most of the wealth of Latinos within the last 10 years has been built within housing, within their mortgages, creating value that way. And when the recession hit, most of that wealth disappeared because it was heavily dependent on home ownership. And yet, nothing has been done very little has been done since then to help alleviate that problem for Latinos.
But it's interesting. Let's also now talk about the Obama administration when it comes to the economy. And Matt, you've said this in polls when you've analyzed it, and so have you, Stephen. But the rate of foreclosures is still high. There is over 10% unemployment in the Latino community. So again. Is President Obama going into this election with a lot of enthusiasm about what the Democratic Party and his administration has done for the economy when it comes to Latino families?
I think there's absolutely a problem there for Obama that the economy has not recovered nearly quickly of a rate that anybody in the entire country has been expecting or wants to see. And that's the same thing for Latinos. There are two differences or two issues here why I think that the Republicans are going to have a hard time using the economy as their trump card with Latinos. Stephen mentioned one of them, and we can't emphasize this enough, and that is that it's very difficult to grasp on to a message that any candidate is giving you when at the same time the candidate is saying things that you feel are offensive or hostile towards your community. There are plenty of African Americans who could be receptive to a Republican message as well, but Obama won 95% of the black vote. That's not because there's 100% economic consistency there. That's because much research shows that African Americans view the Republican Party as being hostile, and they've almost lost that community forever. And I think we're on the verge here of the Republican Party needing to make a decision as to, perhaps Stephen is right, that some of their economic principles resonate, but Latinos are having a hard time listening to those economic principles when they hear these other messages. And for that reason, the president continues to do very well with Latinos, even as Latinos are frustrated about the economy. They see a very open and welcoming party in the Democratic Party, at least that of which Obama has stood for most recently. And so I think that has created a significant problem. The second thing, and I'll say this quickly, is that there are class dimensions here. And the Republicans will be up against some sort of ceiling. Latinos, as compared to the average statistics, are lower in educational attainment, lower in income attainment. And so tax cuts for people who make over $250,000 a year is something that doesn't resonate with that many Latino families. And so they're going to run into some sort of ceiling. Currently, Romney's still far away from that. But
so
it's go ahead.
I just want to focus on something which I find fascinating, and we love to talk about demographics, and that's what you do a lot of, both of you as political scientists. And one thing that's fascinating for anybody sort of looking at things is that what you just said is true, and people say that Latino voters, Stephen, you said this too, tend to be more progressive, at least especially first-generation Latinos. And yet, who are the up-and-coming stars right now in the Latino firmament, in the political firmament? It's Ted Cruz, it's Marco Rubio. It's sort of interesting, isn't it? It seems that right now the spotlight is on Latino Republicans, Susana Martinez, Brian Sandoval, more than Democrats. I mean, we do mention Julian Castro, but that's interesting. Why is that? Stephen?
Well, people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio resonate with the white population, the middle class, independent whites, the Tea Party folks who are frustrated with government, with spending, higher spending, and high debt. And the message that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio bring to the table is very consistent with the message that resonates amongst the Tea Party folks. So I mean, they're not really. There's a potential for folks like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz to be ambassadors for the Republican Party into the Latino community. But so far, given the message, given the policies, it's not really clear that that's possible. There are the other issues with country of origin that many folks talk about.
And speaking of, and you bring up an excellent point, which is if you look at demographics, do you think when you were talking about the fact that right now the Republican rhetoric seems to be, many perceive it as anti-immigrant and anti-Hispanic, and yet with the numbers, do you think that Latino Republicans could be the ones to move the party in a more moderate, dare I say, kinder, gentler party? Matt?
Republican Party needs to do more than just putting out these Latino faces, Rubio and Cruz and Sandoval and Martinez. Just putting out those faces will help to start to change the image. But they need to be putting out people who are authentic, who can relate to the community, who were born and raised in the community and know and have those roots. And I think someone like Rubio has a little more potential, and Susana Martinez, I think, maybe as well. I don't see much in Sandoval or Cruz as being able to be those flag bearers for the party. But they need to not just have those Latino faces out there. They need to be reining in the Chris Kobachs, the Russell Pierce, Virgil Pecks, Jan Brewers, Sharon Engels. I mean, we can make a long list of elected Republican officials who are saying things very hostile towards Latinos. And how does Marco Rubio go out and try to explain away, Chris Kobach's positions? I think when they make that change and they rein in those forces, then someone like Rubio can be quite effective.
Right. I think if you think about it, if someone had said we want to put an electrified fence along the ocean between Cuba and the United States, I'm sure Marco Rubio would have said something about that, right? He's not. He's got to stand up and speak out for Latinos if he's going to expect Latinos to respond to him positively.
And we don't have a lot of time until November 6th, but here we are at the Republican National Convention, and for a few days, there's the possibility of imparting and having a different tone and different messages. If you were both strategists to the party, what would you tell them to do? What can they sort of do to sort of like bridge that gap that you're seeing and that we're seeing consistently in polls? Matt?
Well, I think the first thing they need to do, and this is something that Governor Jeb Bush was on TV just this weekend saying, they need to change the message. They need to become accepting of immigrants. There's nothing we're going to do policy-wise that's going to cause these 12 million undocumented immigrants to not be part of our country. And so we need to stop that rhetoric and find a way to incorporate them. As Stephen indicated earlier, many of these immigrants to America are people who want to start their own business, buy their own home, be successful, do it on their own. They want to pull themselves up. And if the Republican Party just changed their message just on that one issue and became more open, I think you would see a huge turnaround. And that in the last 5 years has been their biggest stumbling block. And so that's what I'm looking for them to do before they can make any headway is to change that big message on immigration.
And Stephen, I'll let you answer that, but I wanted to throw in something interesting too. When we talk about social values, people always throw away that line that Latinos are conservative voters. But it's interesting, Latinos are conservative voters, but they're a little more nuanced. I know the Latino Decisions had a poll that when it came to what they wanted in a legislator or a politician, it was like over 70% bread and butter issues. And I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, like 14% said moral and social values are more important. So with that said, Stephen, how can Republicans appeal to Latinos? But at the same time recognize that it's maybe not like the Aiken argument, if I may say that?
Well, the Republicans need to listen to their own advice when it comes to social values. I mean, they keep saying that immigration doesn't matter because it's number 4 or 5 down the list. But, abortion and gay marriage is even further down the list. And so, if they want to, they need to listen to their own advice and say, look, we need to focus on jobs. We need to focus on the economy, on housing. Get these people up on their feet, allow them to, and not even talking about giving them anything, just allowing them to buy a house, allowing them to work and start their own businesses. The Latino communities, they're not asking for welfare. I mean, they're asking for, I want to get a job, I want to sell oranges on the freeway, I'll do whatever I need to do to make it in this country. And just let me do that. And so, this is consistent with the language of the Republican Party, but it's inconsistent with the actions of the Republican Party. And so, the Republicans need to create some more consistency with what they're saying, with what they're doing. And I think that would go a long way. And if they have ambassadors like Marco Rubio sticking up for Latinos anytime someone makes an Aiken-esque comment, that would also go a long way, because then Latinos would feel like, look, okay, the message is consistent with what they're doing in legislation. We have people that are sticking up for us whenever someone tries to say something that's racist or bigoted. And maybe this is an option for them, because I don't feel like the Democrats are responding to my needs. I want to start a business, and perhaps their policies aren't consistent with what I'm trying to achieve in my life. And so the Republicans really have squandered in the last 2 or 3 years one of the greatest opportunities they've had to reach into the Latino community.
With that said, looking into November, what are some interesting states that we should be looking at and focusing on? I know there's a lot of interesting things, whether it's voter laws, voter registration. In some states like Texas, there seem to be many Latinos, but I know registration could be higher. Matt, give us a quick picture of some of the states that might be interesting for us to look at coming into November.
Sure, absolutely. Well, at the presidential level, the states that have been gaining a lot of attention, which are states like Nevada, Colorado, Florida. These are the 3 biggest Latino states, which all have very large Latino populations. All 3 of those states are showing very, very close elections right now. And in those 3 states, Latinos will be quite influential in the presidential election. Outside the presidential election, there's going to be very close U.S. Senate races in places like Virginia, Massachusetts, Washington State, and there are places where Latinos can be influential in other contests. So it's not just at the presidential level, but there are a number of places where Latinos can be influential. And again, it's not just the big states. As Stephen threw out earlier, Obama's victory in Indiana in 2008 was entirely due to the Latino advantage he got. And so that's why we're also trying to monitor states like North Carolina, Iowa, and others where the Latino population is starting to grow and become a larger percentage.
And so, Stephen, just give us a really quick conclusion here. Do you think that right now, going into November, things are going to change at all? Give us a quick conclusion. Change at all, or is it going to stay more or less the same when it comes to the polls that we see now going to November with the Latino vote?
I think the harsh language will turn off some independents, and so I think the Republican Party will start to soften that language. He's gone through the primary to the hardcore Republican voters, and so the language will soften up. But the policies are not going to soften up. A big concern is that these dreamers who have taken the deferred action policy by the president. What happens if there is a President Romney and he repeals that? These people now are out in the open and are seen by the government as a big concern. So perhaps softening up the language a little bit and preparing for the next 4 years because the current strategy that the Republicans are employing is simply not going to be a viable strategy into the very near future.
Well, I really enjoyed talking to both of you. It was a very enlightening conversation, and it always continues. We'll be talking about this until November and beyond, and for that, please go to NBCLatino.com and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And thank you both, gentlemen. I really enjoyed the chat.
Sure thing.
Bye, Sandra.
Thank you.